we've finished the show. We shot the show. It's called Stories That Matter, and that'll come out on Eagle Television at a later time. We're going to do some bonus footage because you'll be able to use this disc and anything else that you want on there. It's ours, and so we're going to give it to you, and you use it however it can further the kingdom of God. But we wanted to follow up a little bit about the healing service. In the case of the healing service, when we got ready to do the healing service, had no clue really how to do it. And there's a whole conversation there, but it really doesn't much matter. But every year we've done an event called Good News Spectacular, every 12, 18 months, somewhere along in there. And we've had Don Piper, who did the book 90 Minutes in Heaven, and lots of wonderful people have come in. We got ready to do this one, and I had sent out some correspondence to 3 or 4 people that I thought would be perfect match for us. Didn't get any response back. And I said, Lord, what do you want me to do here? And the Lord, as we all understand, the conversations back with me, said, I want to do a healing service. And when I heard the Lord tell me to do a healing service, I said, Lord, we can't. No, listen, no, you must have misunderstood. This is about what I said. We can't do a healing service. Don't know how. Who's going to do a healing service? Who's going to go to it? And then who's going to get healed when we have that service? That's not really a good plan. And the Lord just waited for me for a little bit. It was just like he was, just messing with his fingernails, waiting for me to finish babbling on. And when I finished, well, then he said, get my book, which is the Bible. See what my son, Jesus, did. And I went back, and even though I'd read it many times, when I went back and read them, and I read the stories, and every one of the stories was because you believed, your faith has healed you. And Jesus, and the healings that took place were just amazing. And so we launched into it, and I knew we were going to use Pastor James. And before anybody else even knew it, even my own wife knew it, a person came up to me and she said, Doug, I know who we're going to use for the healing service. And I said, who? And she said, Pastor James Murunga from Kenya. And I said, why do you say that? And she said, well, at 1:34 in the morning last night, he appeared in my bedroom. And I said, what was Pastor James doing in your bedroom? And she said, it was a vision. And it was Pastor James. And she said, I know it's for the healing service. Awesome. And I said, well, thank you. And we moved forward with that. And it was the confirmation, for me certainly, that the right person was chosen. Well, lo and behold, if we fast forward to the September 25th event, one of the people that came forward was that same woman. And you laid hands on her. She said, at the time that you laid hands on her, she could feel the heat coming from your hand into her body. The odd part about that is you felt the same sensation,
I felt
not
it.
knowing who she was or anything else, because there was 400 people that came forward for healing that night. She went back to the doctor about a week later, and for her regular checkup. She had a lung problem and she had a heart murmur. When she went back to the doctor, the lung problem was cured.
Wow.
No longer
Praise
present,
God.
and the heart murmur
Praise
was
God.
gone. And
Awesome.
and she was one
Thank
of
you,
many
Jesus.
who took the time to send emails back to us, because they were prayer warrior lists, and we were sending prayer warriors messages out to lots of people before you ever got here, praying for your safety, praying for the event, praying for God's hand to work on the project, praying for strength for those people to have the courage to come to the event, and then to come forward once they got to the event. And so many of those people that sent things back all included healing, whether it was cancer. There was one that had a problem, was ill that night, and one of the pastors laid hands on him, and his wife was so sick that she couldn't come to the event. And he said, would you please pray for my wife? And the pastor did. And when he got home, she was well. And the healings after healings that occurred. And it's an amazing event, and they're still continuing. And it was all the Lord's hand. It's like we've all talked about before, that there isn't anybody I know who can heal anybody, but except God. And the people did that and came forward with it. Now, what else what do you guys want to talk about? Because this video is going to be seen in Kenya and churches and stuff. And I can tell you, I've never been to Kenya, but I can tell you that the power that these folks have, the Lord working through them, is tremendous. We in the States, we in our church can feel it. Can feel that when you folks come in. It is tremendous, and we're so thankful. And the people that night were so thankful when we said, these folks have traveled from Kenya, halfway around the world,
Yeah.
to come to the United States to share, just because that they were asked, and it's the Lord's project, and the Lord said, yes.
Well, thank you so much, Doug, for extending the invitation for us to be at the Good News Spectacular and the healing meeting, and also for us to be here to do the recording. Talking a little bit more about what we do, we have about 4 strategic areas that we focus on in our ministry back home. Number 1 is the strategic area that we focus on is to gather Christians, Christian leaders and Christian believers into unity and pray for the healing and transformation of their land. The second key area that we address is building the capacity of the Christian leaders in discipleship and leadership areas of ministry, because like in Kenya, generally with majority being Christians, we still have lots of social challenges, community challenges. There is a lot of abortion that goes on. There is a lot of wickedness that goes on. And so we believe that the best way of countering that is to build the capacity of the churches through the leaders to be more effective in their ministry and also their discipleship process, so that if many churches can focus on the priority of discipleship and training Christians to live based on Christian values and principles, then we will see community transformation. The third area is the love and care, where Jesus talks about, I was hungry, but you did not feed me. I was thirsty, but you did not give me water to drink. So, and the story of the Good Samaritan. So we have designed our ministry to focus also on that love and care as a basis of responding to the issues and the needs within the community. There is so much poverty in our communities, so we've established a microfinance to be able to give microloans to help particularly the young men, young women, and also a special emphasis on the women to be able to access affordable loans and run small businesses to sustain themselves. The fourth area that we focus on is an outreach ministry, where we are able to reach out to other regions, other communities that are unreached with the gospel. We went up north into Turkana, and years ago there was a drought in that community and people were dying. And we prayed. In fact, my father, who is an apostolic leader, he led the team to pray and led the entire village to hold the dust, that desert sand in northern Kenya, before God. And we prayed and said, Lord, would you send rain? 2 days later, it was reported in the media that Turkana had received the largest amount of rain they had seen in many years.
Wow. The story of Elijah.
Yes. And now when we go to that village, guess what happens? The entire village, number one, they came to Christ. And a church was planted, a school was established. Whenever we go to that village, they say, let's go and listen to the people who pray to their God, and their God sends rain. So that's a major witness, in terms of reaching out to various areas. But I would like Maria to touch, and together with Ann, they'll be able to touch on this love and care and some of the key focuses that we have in those areas.
James mentioned about the microfinance. This is how we do it. We put the women and the youth into smaller groups that we call God Love groups, so that they're not just working towards business and developing, getting an economy or resources out of their groups or from the microloans, but they're also doing Bible study in the groups. So it's an avenue also of not just economic empowerment, but spiritual, social, economic empowerment for the groups. And besides the microfinance, what we've also been doing, we realized that women in Africa, at the prime age when they start having their cycles, their monthly cycles, that's really where the enemy, the door is open and the devil comes in. And that determines who they are in future. So when they start their cycles, and first of all, no one has told them about it. Even their mothers have not told them about it. So they find themselves there, and it becomes like a curse, because everyone will be telling you, why are you doing this? Why are you not doing this? And so you feel like you are, rejected by society. And for the young school-going kids, they stop going to school because they're stigmatized. They are in confusion. They are just almost like in desperation. They don't know what to do. And so we found out that in some families, what happens, for those who a family that could afford a mattress to sleep on, the girls would cut pieces of that and use as their sanitary. And for the many families that could not afford mattresses, because in Africa, in the villages, most of the girls of the families use grass in sacks, and that's their mattress. So for these girls who would not do that, who could not afford mattresses, they would use cow dung, and that keeps away the flies and keeps away the stench. And so you can imagine, Kenya, we have 3 school terms, which are 3 months, and then a break, January, February, and March, and then break in April, and then go on 3 months, and then break, and then December holidays. So you can imagine a girl in Africa doesn't go to school for 9 weeks. And at the end of the 8th grade, they have to sit on not even 8th grade, at the end of every year, they have to sit at the same exam with the boys who've been going to school to qualify them to go to the next class. So at 8th grade, we have these girls, doing a national exam, one national exam with the boys who have been in school throughout. So the result is the girls drop out of school, and then we get early marriages from age 13 to 14. We get these young girls getting pregnant, and then saddening is some of the families, because they're so poor and they would rather marry off this girl because she's pregnant, or just marry them off to get some money to educate the boys, or send them away to be house helps at that early age of 13, 14 to earn an income for the family, and some of it will go to the boys to go to school. So looking at that, we looked at how do we as a church provide solution, because the government is not giving solutions. And so, as James said at the beginning, the church is the answer. We are the mothers, we are the fathers of these young people. Every girl in a community belongs to a church. And so we are better placed than the government to provide solutions. So we came up with this and said, how can we start reaching out to these girls? And our ultimate goal is not just to provide sanitary for them. We are providing Jesus, because once we touch them at that prime stage of life, it restores their dignity. So the name of this initiative and project is called Restore My Dignity, because once their dignity and is restored at that level, they're able to move on as women who have dignity and who feel good about themselves. They will go to school like the normal kids and earn an education and earn a living because of that. And so we realize that at this age, the young girls, again, they get married and then they get pregnant, and most of them can't have babies, can't hold babies in their uterus at that age. Some of them, they have the babies and then they develop a condition called fistula because their uterus is ruptured. So they cannot sustain their urine. So, and it's all as a result of, lack of sanitary. And then they miss their education. Then they get into early marriages, early pregnancies, and no one cares about that. And we decided to do this project, not giving them. I started with carrying sanitary from the United States. Anytime we would visit, women would give me sanitary and I would carry to take home. But because we don't have better ways to conserve and preserve our environment, you would find these litter everywhere. So we thought, what's the best solution? So we got a company that manufactures these. We have one company in Kenya that manufactures these. A pack of 8 reusable sanitary towels that can be used for 6 months. They provide them with 8 pieces of that, and so they can reuse them for 6 months at $10. And when we started giving out the sanitary, we realized something very key. Some of the girls can't even afford underwear. So how do you provide sanitary without underwear? So we made a second pack that has 2 pieces of underwear, 2 pieces of soap, so that even if they won't use the soap to wash their bodies, they can use that to wash their reusable sanitary. And then a toothbrush and a toothpaste, which is about $5. So with that, we have we can reach out to the girls at that prime age and restore their dignity at that age. And another project that goes with that, at high school, at 8th grade, when the girls graduate they do the national exam, they are supposed to join high school. In Kenya right now, we have free primary education. But when you get to high school, there is no free education. So most of the parents who are poor because of poverty would prefer the boys going on and the girls doing something else to raise money for the family. So what they do, the girls drop out of school, the boys, many of the boys go on. And so because they have to pay school fees to be in school. So with that, we've also introduced another pack, which is a school fees pack for the girls to also go to school and be able to get a future, because there's a saying that says, you know, you train one woman, you train the whole world, because she carries generations. And if a generation is cut just because she lacked sanitary, she lacked an education, and that means her future is just, she doesn't have a future. She's miserable. And, you know, I speak to people and tell them, look at the churches. Who are the most numbers, the majority in the churches? It's the women. So those are the people who are able to carry generations and to bring forth generations that can have a meaning in the future. But if their dignity and their lives is cut, then they don't have a future.
And the reason why we want to keep them in school is that so that they are not at risk, because we have had rape cases. When they stay at home, you'll find that they are at risk to rape, and so that is why we want to keep them in school. And as she said, at that level, when we are introducing, we are talking to them, we talk about values, we introduce values to them, we preach Christ to them, and at that time they are able to know Christ. And because of the love that they receive through the gifts, they realize that God is great. Yeah, we teach them how to be grateful.
So that way you are able to reach out to the women, to the feminine generation. Through their need, you're able to minister Christ to them. And they won't say no to Christ because my dignity has been restored. And someone cares about what everyone else doesn't care about. So there's been a tremendous work with that, and we thank God that we can be able to be doing that.
So much of the time when you go into the villages, you need to be able to use that time to inform the kids who are becoming will be getting of age for their cycle to begin, so that they even know what's happening to them.
Yes.
And that they're aware of it, and then be able to help from there.
Yes, and actually that's, as I said earlier, James said it, the solution is with the churches. It's just because our mothers were never taught these things. So it's a generational trend. So we are saying we have to stop it now. We have to start educating the mothers and the women to take responsibility, to teach the younger generations. As the Bible says, let the older women teach. But there's been that generational gap where, you know, there's been no teaching, and it's almost like when you get there in Africa, as I said, you know, they consider, I went through that, Anna went through that. We look at it as a curse. And I remember having made, when I was married to James, that's when he told me, this is not a curse, it's a blessing. So you can imagine all that, those years, I never knew it was a blessing.
Right.
Yeah. So it needs godly intervention.
You know, being here in the States, that wasn't a problem that I was even aware was in other countries, so I never thought about it, I guess. But I can understand exactly what you're saying is that you lose your dignity and you fall behind with the educational system, and now you don't pass, and now your dignity suffers again because not only did I not get to attend, I can't pass what the boys are passing. And so now I'm excluded.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
And then they fall at risks of being third, fourth, fifth wives. And as I think James said, other people come with interest-free, secular people, interest-free loans, and they get the women to join them. And so it also poses as a risk to the girls and to the women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we're in Chapman, Kansas as we're filming this. We're in our studio, and Maria and I were visiting some about studio because in Kenya, she will have the opportunity, perhaps the opportunity, but what we've done here is the same thing she could do in Kenya.
Yes.
This is a green screen, and Glenda's behind our camera over here, and for the next couple of short period of time, Glenda's going to drop in different backdrops so you can kind of see what this looks like and the potential for it. There's different backdrops, but where we're standing here now, it's just a green screen behind us. Because of that, we can drop in lots of other backdrops that give you opportunities. This could perhaps become a resource for you guys to be able to get the message out to lots of people in a hurry by filming one program and then duplicating the tapes.
Sure.
And my experience has been, at least in our country, our youth that grow up in my own family, my youth, knows far more about technology than I do, and they always let me know it too because they're just better at it. But so those things may very likely happen for you in the future, and you'll be able to share that with 5,000 of the 30 churches you go to, plus all of the others that you're helping with.
That's our prayer.
Because it's doable. What we have done here isn't a great expense. It's just more work and just planning, and God's hand has been on every one of our projects here because we've asked Him to, and He's answered those prayers. And so we've made do to have done quite a bit with very little.
Amen.
And as you folks have too. And it's tremendous.
Amen.
Pastor Ann, have you been to the States before?
Yeah, last year I attended the Convocation of Prayer conference.
In Kansas.
Yeah, in Kansas.
Well, good. Well, welcome back.
Is it Wichita?
Yes, I'm Wichita.
Yeah. Very good. Anything else you want to go into?
Well, I think we're
Good.
We're
good.
good? All
We're
right.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you folks have a treasure in Kenya, and we're so thankful for them traveling to the States to help out.